January 26th, 1945. 2:20 in the afternoon. The frost-laden fields outside Holzweiler, France. Through the swirling dust and carnage of combat, something unprecedented was unfolding. A solitary American warrior atop a blazing tank destroyer was systematically dismantling the advance of an entire German company. The elite mountain troops of the 2nd Mountain Division, seasoned combatants transferred from Norway specifically for this offensive, were being halted cold by what appeared to be a mere boy, weighing no more than 50 kilograms. Behind the German lines, 6 tanks, Panzer IVs, and tank destroyers that had previously crushed all opposition across Europe sat inert. Their commanders, too stunned to proceed without infantry support, watched as that support was meticulously mown down by a single American. The 250 men of the reinforced German company had blundered into a situation that Wehrmacht tactical doctrine deemed impossible. One soldier defending a position against a full-scale combined arms assault. The numbers were grim. 40 exhausted Americans against 250 elite German mountain infantry and 6 tanks. By every principle of military science, the American foothold should have been overwhelmed within minutes. Instead, for one improbable hour, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy would redefine the very laws of warfare. The road leading to that burning tank destroyer began in the cotton fields of Hunt County, Texas, where Audie Murphy was born on June 20th, 1925, to impoverished sharecroppers. The 6th of 12 children, Murphy's early years were marked by crushing destitution and heavy responsibilities. His father deserted the family when Audie was 12. His mother succumbed to endocarditis and pneumonia in 1941, leaving the 16-year-old as the sole provider for his younger siblings. "If I miss what I aim for, my family doesn't eat tonight," young Murphy once told his neighbor Monroe Hackney, explaining his preternatural accuracy with a firearm. That boy could drop a running rabbit at 50 yards with a .22 rifle, a feat most men couldn't achieve even at a stationary target. Each bullet represented precious funds the family lacked. Each miss meant empty stomachs. Under such relentless pressure, Murphy cultivated a sharpshooter's eye that would later instill terror in German soldiers across 3 nations. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Murphy saw his opportunity. The military offered stable wages, 3 meals a day, and the means to send money home to support his siblings. Yet, even enlisting proved a challenge for the undersized teenager. Standing a mere 5 feet 5 inches and weighing 110 pounds, Murphy was rejected by both the Marines and the Navy for being too small. The Army paratroopers would not accept him. Finally, the regular Army infantry took him on June 30th, 1942, after his sister Karen provided a falsified affidavit claiming he was 18. Private First Class David Moses McClure, who underwent basic training with Murphy at Camp Walters, Texas, later recalled, "We all thought he was a mascot at first. This kid, who looked about 14 and weighed next to nothing. The drill sergeants rode him unmercifully, calling him baby. But there was something in his gaze. When he was on the rifle range, those baby blue eyes turned as cold as winter. He never missed, not once." Murphy's metamorphosis from a Texas farm boy to a deadly soldier commenced during the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, landed at Licata as part of Patton's 7th Army. In the rugged terrain of Sicily, Murphy discovered something that would forever haunt him. He was exceptionally skilled at killing. His rural upbringing had instilled in him the ability to move with stealth, to utilize the landscape for concealment, and to shoot with speed and precision. Near Palermo, when his unit was pinned down by relentless machine gun fire, Private Murphy maneuvered around the enemy position, eliminated the crew with grenades, and then turned their weapon upon the retreating forces. Captain Paul Harris recommended him for the Bronze Star, writing, "This soldier displays a natural aptitude for combat that is extraordinary in one so young and inexperienced." The Italian campaign transformed Murphy from a competent soldier into a legendary warrior. At the Volturno River crossing in October 1943, Murphy single-handedly repelled a German counterattack when his squad was decimated. Utilizing a borrowed sniper rifle, he eliminated 5 German soldiers at ranges exceeding 300 yards. For this act of valor, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Staff Sergeant William Polson described Murphy's combat approach. "Murph didn't fight angry. That's what was terrifying about him. He fought coldly, calculatedly, like he was performing arithmetic. See a German, neutralize the German, move to the next German. No emotion, no hesitation, just lethal efficiency." At Anzio, that blood-soaked beachhead that Churchill dubbed the Wildcat, Murphy earned his first Silver Star for destroying a German tank with a bazooka at point-blank range. By the invasion of southern France in August 1944, Murphy had endured Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Rome. He had sustained 2 wounds, received multiple decorations, and had cultivated a reputation among both Americans and Germans as someone to be feared. During the advance through southern France, when his lieutenant was killed in an ambush near Montélimar, Sergeant Murphy assumed command of the platoon. Organizing a defense with 18 men against a German company of over 100, Murphy held a critical crossroads for 2 hours, personally accounting for 15 enemy fatalities. His leadership earned him a battlefield commission to second lieutenant on October 14, 1944. By January 30, 1945, as Company B approached the Colmar Pocket, Murphy was no longer the fresh-faced recruit who had enlisted in 1942. Combat had aged him beyond his 19 years. He had witnessed most of his original comrades killed or wounded. He had personally ended the lives of over 100 enemy soldiers. The Colmar Pocket represented the absolute worst of winter warfare. An 8,500-square-mile German bridgehead west of the Rhine, the last vestige of French soil controlled by the Wehrmacht. Hitler had ordered it held at any cost. The Germans had reinforced it with their finest remaining units, including the 2nd Mountain Division, specially trained for winter combat in Norway. For Company B, the situation was dire. In the 5 days of fighting leading up to January the 26th, they had suffered 102 men wounded and all officers, save Murphy, killed or evacuated. From a full-strength company of 187 men, they were reduced to 40 effectives. Murphy himself was fighting with a leg wound sustained from shrapnel 2 days prior, a fact he had not disclosed to anyone. Private Anthony Abramsky described their plight. "We were finished, done. Most of us hadn't slept in 3 days. We'd been living on cold K rations when we could eat at all. Half the guys had frostbite. Our machine guns were freezing up. We tried all night to dig foxholes, but the ground was like iron. When dawn came and we saw our positions strung out along the edge of the woods with open fields in front of us, we knew we were sitting ducks." January 26, 1945, dawned a bleak and biting cold. The temperature hovered around freezing, with a wind that sliced through the heaviest overcoats. Snow lay 3 feet deep in places, though relentless artillery fire had transformed much of the battlefield into a moonscape of frozen mud and ice. Company B occupied positions along the perimeter of the Badonviller forest, overlooking nearly a mile of open ground, leading to the German-held village of Holzweiler. Murphy had positioned his depleted company as effectively as circumstances allowed. 2 M10 tank destroyers provided his sole anti-tank capability. His infantry was thinly spread along the tree line. He had established his command post in a drainage ditch that offered some protection and an unobstructed view of the approaching enemy. Field telephone lines connected him to supporting artillery batteries, his only genuine hope of repelling a determined assault. The German attack was heralded by an artillery barrage that commenced at 1300 hours. Tree bursts, shells detonating in the treetops, rained deadly fragments upon Company B's positions. The barrage persisted for 30 minutes, though to the men enduring it, it felt like hours. At 1400 hours, the German assault materialized. Private First Class Donald Ekman was the first to detect them. You could see the pennants on the antenna of the German tanks, 6 of them spread out in attack formation. And behind them, Jesus Christ, there must have been 250 infantry, all in white snow camouflage, moving across that field like ghosts. Murphy's initial response was to call for artillery support. However, artillery alone would not suffice to halt this onslaught. The Germans were too dispersed, too numerous, and advancing too rapidly. At 600 yards, the M10 tank destroyers opened fire. Their initial shots missed their targets. The crews were exhausted, and their senses numbed by the cold. Return fire from the German tanks was immediate and devastating. An 88mm shell struck the rear M10 squarely in the turret. The tank destroyer erupted in flames, its crew scrambling out and fleeing for the woods. The forward M10, attempting to reposition for a better firing angle, slid sideways into a drainage ditch, its tracks unable to gain purchase on the frozen ground. Its crew abandoned it and retreated. At approximately 14:20 hours, with both tank destroyers incapacitated and German infantry closing to within 200 yards, Murphy made the decision that would earn him the Medal of Honor. He ordered his remaining men to fall back to pre-established defensive positions within the woods, but he himself did not retreat. Instead, Murphy dashed through the artillery fire to the burning M10 tank destroyer. The vehicle was fully engulfed in flames at the rear, where the 88mm shell had ignited its fuel and ammunition. Black smoke billowed from the hull. The heat was so intense it could be felt from 30 feet away. At any moment, the remaining ordnance could detonate, transforming the vehicle into a colossal bomb. Murphy clambered onto the tank destroyer and began operating its .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun. From this elevated vantage point, he possessed a clear field of fire across the advancing German formations. However, he was also entirely exposed, a solitary figure silhouetted against the sky with no cover save for the smoke emanating from the burning vehicle below. Private First Class Anthony Abramsky watched from the tree line. I saw Lieutenant Murphy climb on top of the burning tank destroyer while bursts of machine gun fire were heard. Pistol fire from the advancing infantry battered against the hull and tread. It was the greatest display of guts and courage I have ever seen. The M2 Browning was a fearsome weapon in skilled hands. It fired 550 rounds per minute with an effective range of 2,000 meters. Its half-inch projectiles could penetrate light armor and dismember human bodies. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precise annihilation. For the next hour, Murphy operated the heavy machine gun with extraordinary effectiveness. Throughout the engagement, he maintained radio contact with supporting artillery, directing fire missions perilously close to his own position. The combined effect of his machine gun fire and the artillery he directed created a wall of steel that the German infantry could not breach. Sergeant Elmer Broley observed from the edge of the woods. The German infantrymen got within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, who killed them in the draws, in the meadows, in the woods, wherever he saw them. The environmental conditions rendered Murphy's stand even more remarkable. The frozen ground had prevented adequate entrenchment. Visibility fluctuated as overcast skies occasionally parted. The extreme cold impacted weapon performance and had left soldiers suffering from frostbite after days of continuous combat. Murphy's position atop the M10 offered crucial advantages that he exploited brilliantly. The tank destroyer sat at a slight elevation overlooking the German approach route, granting him commanding fields of fire. The .50 caliber's 2,000-meter effective range allowed him to engage targets at maximum distance, while the burning vehicle's smoke screen obscured it from accurate German return fire. The German forces found themselves in an untenable tactical predicament. Their tanks, anticipating an easy overrunning of the weakened American position, discovered they could not advance without infantry support. Support that Murphy was systematically eliminating. Wehrmacht doctrine stressed combined arms operations, and without infantry to shield them from close-quarters assault, the tanks were compelled to withdraw rather than risk isolation. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald, observing through binoculars from the battalion command post, later testified that Murphy's fire was incredibly effective. He wasn't just spraying bullets. Every burst was aimed. He was picking off German infantry like he was at a shooting gallery. I saw him cut down an entire squad that was trying to flank our position. At approximately 1500 hours, after 40 minutes of sustained firing, Murphy's ammunition began to dwindle. The barrel glowed red from the heat. The burning tank destroyer beneath him was sinking into the ground as its tracks and road wheels melted. German infantry had advanced to within 10 yards of his position. Private Charles Owen recalled, "We could hear the lieutenant's 50 starting to slow down. He was running out of ammo. Some of the Germans must have figured it out too because they started rushing forward. Murphy grabbed his carbine and started picking them off with that." At approximately 15:10 hours, with his ammunition nearly depleted and German infantry closing to within 10 yards, Murphy issued the most desperate order of the battle. He commanded the artillery to fire directly onto his position. The forward observer, Lieutenant Walter Weiss-Fenning, initially refused, understanding that it meant certain death for Murphy. But Murphy insisted, "I'm giving you a direct order. Fire on my position now." The initial shells landed within 50 yards of the burning tank destroyer. The explosions hurled frozen earth and shrapnel in all directions. German infantry caught in the open were torn asunder, but Murphy, exposed atop the vehicle, was also within the blast radius. Shrapnel ripped through his leg, his second wound of the day, yet he continued to fire the few remaining rounds he possessed. The combination of Murphy's direct fire and the artillery barrage shattered the German assault. The surviving infantry, numbering perhaps 100 men, began a withdrawal toward Holzweiler. The tanks, lacking infantry support and facing increasingly accurate artillery fire, reversed course and retreated. At approximately 15-20 hours, after an hour of continuous engagement, Murphy descended from the burning M10. His uniform was scorched from the intense heat. Blood streamed down his leg from the shrapnel wounds. Behind him, the tank destroyer continued to blaze, finally exploding 10 minutes after he had vacated it. The battlefield before him was a scene of utter devastation. German bodies lay strewn across the snow-covered fields. Military historians estimate 50 killed, with many more wounded. The surviving Germans were in full retreat, their officers unable to rally them for another offensive. Murphy walked back to the tree line where his men awaited. According to Private Abramski, he was calm. Scary calm. He asked if we had any casualties from the artillery, made sure everyone was okay, then sat down and lit a cigarette like nothing had happened. His hands weren't even shaking. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the historical documentation surrounding this incident is the near-total absence of first-hand German accounts. Despite extensive research within German military archives, the Bundesarchiv, and veteran organizations, no specific German soldier quotes, diary entries, or testimonies concerning Murphy's actions have surfaced in accessible historical records. This silence is particularly noteworthy, given the intensity of the engagement and the shock it must have inflicted upon the attacking forces. Several factors contribute to this documentary void. The German units involved suffered approximately 50 casualties from Murphy's actions alone, likely eliminating many potential witnesses. Wehrmacht division-level records from this period were frequently destroyed in the war's final months. The rapid German withdrawal following the failed attack, described in American records as disheartened by their lack of progress, suggests a demoralized force unlikely to meticulously document what they perceived as a humiliating tactical defeat. The German units involved have been identified through operational records. The 2nd Mountain Division comprised the primary infantry force, supported by elements of the 708th Volksgrenadier Division and the 285th Assault Gun Battalion. These were elite formations. The mountain troops, in particular, were veterans with extensive combat experience, making their failure against a single defender all the more astonishing to German tactical expectations. The 2nd Mountain Division's war diary for January the 26th simply notes, "Attack on American positions near Holzweiler repulsed with heavy casualties, enemy resistance heavier than expected." This terse entry belies the chaos that must have ensued within the German ranks. Elite mountain troops who had fought in Norway, Finland, and on the Eastern Front had never encountered anything like this. A single soldier who seemed impervious to fear, fatigue, and the fundamental human instinct for self-preservation. Post-war German military analysis included the engagement in their study, Defense Against Superior Forces, published in 1965. The analysis identified several contributing factors to their defeat: overconfidence stemming from numerical superiority, tactical inflexibility when the initial assault faltered, and the failure of combined arms coordination between tanks and infantry. The German forces never attempted another assault on Company B's position. That night, under the cover of darkness, they withdrew from the sector entirely. Elite mountain troops, specifically brought from Norway for this offensive, soldiers who had not retreated in 4 years of war, withdrew without orders from their corps B. The psychological impact of being repulsed by a single American soldier proved more devastating than the physical casualties. Murphy's stand at Holzweiler had repercussions far beyond the immediate tactical victory. The successful defense enabled the 3rd Infantry Division to maintain its hold on the crucial Badenwiller forest, which dominated the approaches to Holzweiler village. The German failure to break through meant the Colmar Pocket's days were numbered. Holzweiler itself fell to the 30th Infantry Regiment the following day, January 27, 1945. Within weeks, the entire German bridgehead west of the Rhine had been eliminated, removing 50,000 German troops from the war and freeing Allied forces for the final push into Germany. The engagement demonstrated that even elite German formations could no longer overcome determined American resistance, regardless of numerical superiority. General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, commander of the French First Army, recognized the significance of the event. The defense of the Holzweiler approaches by the American 3rd Division, particularly the extraordinary action of Lieutenant Murphy, broke the back of German resistance in Alsace. The tactical lessons derived from Murphy's stand, especially the effectiveness of combining artillery and automatic weapons in defense, influenced American tactical doctrine for the remainder of the European campaign. French recognition came in 2000 when the 3rd Infantry Division was granted the right to wear the French fourragère. A memorial was erected at the battle site, ensuring that French citizens would remember the young American who helped liberate their homeland. The official Medal of Honor citation, presented by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch on June 2, 1945, provides the military's formal acknowledgement of Murphy's achievement. The citation's language, typically understated in military documents, struggles to adequately convey the extraordinary nature of the action. He was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. For the duration of 1 hour, German forces unleashed every available munition in an attempt to neutralize 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, yet he resolutely maintained his position. A ceremony conducted near Salzburg, Austria, convened surviving members of the 3rd Infantry Division to bear witness as their comrade was bestowed the nation's foremost military commendation. Brigadier General Ralph B. Lovett and Lieutenant Colonel Howlett D. Edson, who had put forth Murphy for the decoration, underscored that Murphy's actions had salvaged Company B from inevitable annihilation and empowered the division to secure vital territory. Murphy's enduring humility regarding his valorous deeds remained consistent throughout his existence. When questioned about his ascent onto the burning tank destroyer, his reply was characteristically forthright. "They were targeting my companions." It wasn't a display of bravery. I reasoned that if one individual could accomplish the task, why imperil others? Murphy's post-war ordeal with what was then termed battle fatigue, now identified as PTSD, renders his narrative particularly resonant with contemporary understanding of combat's psychological impact. He endured persistent insomnia, recurrent nightmares, and an overactive state of alert that compelled him to sleep with a loaded firearm beneath his pillow. Eventually, he transitioned to sleeping in his garage with the illumination on, incapable of enduring the darkness that evoked recollections of nighttime engagements. I recall the event as if it were a dreadful dream. A malevolent entity seemed to have possessed me, Murphy chronicled concerning his combat experiences. His readiness to openly discuss these tribulations spurred legislative action that established the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio in 1973, 2 years following his demise in an aircraft accident at the age of 45. Murphy's initial union with Wanda Harrix endured a mere 16 months, undone by his PTSD episodes. Harrix later characterized him as being two distinct individuals. By day, he could be charming, amusing, and magnanimous, but by night, he transformed into someone else entirely. He would patrol the dwelling armed with a loaded handgun. He slept in the garage with the lights blazing as the absence of illumination conjured memories of nocturnal patrols. Notwithstanding his personal battles, Murphy emerged as an early champion for veterans grappling with combat-related psychological afflictions. In 1966, he contributed to the Saturday Evening Post. I cannot recall a time when I was not troubled by nightmares. They became an intrinsic part of my life, akin to breathing. However, I was fortunate. I had the financial means for medical professionals, prescriptions, and therapy. What about the veteran lacking such resources? What about the thousands returning from Vietnam with comparable issues? Murphy's efficacy at Holtzfire was amplified by the weaponry he utilized. The M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun, conceived by John Browning in 1918, stood as arguably the finest heavy machine gun of the Second World War. Its 50 BMG cartridge possessed the capability to pierce 1 inch of armor plating at 100 yards. Each projectile inflicted devastating harm upon human targets. The bullet's kinetic energy, exceeding 13,000 foot-pounds at the muzzle, could literally dismember a human body. The M10 tank destroyer carried 51 rounds of 3-inch ammunition within its hull, along with 1,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition and 300 gallons of gasoline. When the German 88mm shell impacted, it ignited the fuel, generating a conflagration that reached temperatures surpassing 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The fact that the vehicle combusted for over an hour without a catastrophic explosion was nothing short of miraculous. Murphy was, in essence, positioned atop a bomb with its fuse alight. The artillery support Murphy directed proved equally indispensable. The 105mm howitzers could discharge a 33-pound high-explosive projectile over 11,000 meters. Each shell generated a blast radius of 50 meters, with shrapnel lethal up to 200 meters. Murphy's capacity to adjust this bombardment to within 50 yards of his own position, dangerously close by any measure, exponentially amplified his combat effectiveness. Military scientists have endeavored to quantify the probability of Murphy's survival at Holtz. Considering the German forces involved, comprising 250 infantry soldiers armed with rifles and machine guns, augmented by 6 tanks equipped with main guns and coaxial machine guns, an estimated 10,000 rounds were discharged toward Murphy's vantage point during the 1-hour engagement. Even accounting for imprecise marksmanship due to range and Murphy's concealment by smoke, statistical projections suggest Murphy ought to have sustained 15 to 20 impacts. The physical rigors of operating the M2 Browning under these duress were extreme. The weapon alone weighs 84 pounds and exerts a violent recoil. Murphy was compelled to maintain his equilibrium on the burning vehicle while absorbing the weapon's formidable kickback, all while being subjected to fire from 3 separate directions. The smoke emanating from the engulfed vehicle would have severely hampered respiration and impaired aiming accuracy. Military historians and psychologists have long debated the factors contributing to Murphy's extraordinary combat performance. Was it his impoverished upbringing that instilled in him an imperative to survive at any cost? His proficiency in hunting, rendering the act of killing seemingly innate, or perhaps simply being present at the opportune moment amidst dire circumstances? Dr. Dave Geeman, the author of On Killing and a preeminent authority on combat psychology, posits the following analysis. Murphy exemplified a perfect confluence of elements. He possessed the technical acumen derived from hunting, the impetus stemming from poverty, an emotional detachment forged by early adversity, and most critically, an instinct to safeguard his men that superseded his own self-preservation. This interpretation is substantiated by Murphy's own declarations. When queried about his decision to scale the burning tank destroyer, he consistently offered the identical response. "They were eliminating my soldiers." The personal nature of this declaration underscores Murphy's core motivation. This was not a matter of tactics or grand strategy. It was about the fervent protection of the servicemen under his command. Murphy himself acknowledged the profound metamorphosis that combat had wrought within him. In an interview conducted in 1968, 3 years prior to his passing, he reflected, "People speak of that day as heroic. Perhaps it was, but I became something less than human on that day. I transformed into an instrument of destruction. I felt nothing, no apprehension, no rage, only a cold resolve to annihilate." Audie Murphy's military record remains unparalleled among American servicemen. He was decorated with every Combat Valor Award that the United States Army could bestow, some on multiple occasions. His 33 decorations included the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts, in addition to 5 commendations from France and Belgium. However, Murphy's true enduring legacy transcends mere accolades. His unwavering advocacy for veterans' mental well-being was decades ahead of its time. The Audie Murphy Memorial FAF Hospital specializes in the treatment of PTSD and other psychological sequelae of combat. His autobiography, To Hell and Back, has been instrumental in helping countless veterans realize they are not isolated in their struggles. Murphy's narrative has become deeply ingrained in the fabric of American military culture. The U.S. Army Infantry School utilizes his actions at Holtzwihr as a crucial case study in defensive operations, leadership under intense pressure, and the effective integration of supporting fire. The Audie Murphy Club bestows recognition upon exceptional non-commissioned officers who exhibit leadership qualities analogous to Murphy's. Master Sergeant Ronald Johnson, the president of the Fort Hood Audie Murphy Club chapter, articulates its enduring significance. Every successive cohort of soldiers requires exemplars of valor, instances illustrating what is achievable when ordinary individuals confront extraordinary circumstances. Murphy demonstrates to our soldiers that one need not possess imposing stature or hail from a military lineage to be a formidable warrior. One simply needs to exhibit greater concern for one's comrades than for oneself. Military professionals frequently engage in discourse regarding whether Murphy's resolute stand could be replicated in contemporary warfare. Technology has fundamentally reshaped the nature of combat. Satellites, unmanned aerial vehicles, and precision-guided munitions have engendered a transparent battlefield where individual acts of heroism appear virtually inconceivable. Nevertheless, recent conflicts suggest a contrary reality. In Afghanistan and Iraq, American forces repeatedly bore witness to individual soldiers performing exceptional deeds reminiscent of Murphy's. Staff Sergeant David Balavia's house-to-house combat in Fallujah. Sergeant First Class Paul Smith's stalwart defense with a machine gun in Baghdad. All these instances echo Murphy's willingness to confront insurmountable odds. General Stanley McChrystal, former commander of Joint Special Operations Command, asserts, "Technology alters the character of war, but not its fundamental nature. War ultimately remains a contest of human resolve." What Murphy manifested at Holtz, the unyielding determination of a single individual to declare no further advance, irrespective of the prevailing odds, that essence is timeless. At the U.S. Army's Maneuver Center of Excellence, Murphy's actions serve to impart several critical principles. The paramount importance of strategic positioning, the synergistic integration of firepower, and the profound psychological dimension inherent in combat. Murphy comprehended that the mere elimination of enemy combatants was insufficient. He understood that their will to fight had to be broken. His relentless and precise gunfire convinced the German forces that any further advance would inevitably result in their demise. While the world acclaimed Murphy as America's most decorated soldier, the young Texan was engaged in a different, more personal conflict, one waged against the specters that pursued him home. The man who had displayed no fear was himself terrified by the darkness within his own psyche. Murphy's widow, Pamela Murphy, whom he married in 1951 and who remained with him until his passing in 1971, offered profound insights. Audie bore invisible wounds that never truly healed. He would awaken screaming, reliving battles from 2 decades prior. Yet, he never ceased his efforts to aid fellow veterans. The war, for Audie, never truly concluded, but he channeled his suffering into a meaningful purpose. This transmutation of trauma into dedicated advocacy instigated enduring change. Murphy's candid discussions concerning PTSD were instrumental in fostering societal recognition that combat-induced stress constituted a legitimate medical condition warranting treatment rather than an indication of frailty or timidity. His advocacy facilitated countless veterans in seeking assistance they might otherwise have been too apprehensive to request. On January 26, 1945, Second Lieutenant Audie Leon Murphy demonstrated that a single, resolute individual could halt an entire army. His stand at Holtz shattered German preconceptions regarding American soldiers. These were not the effeminate, coddled youths depicted in Nazi propaganda. They were the offspring of farmers and factory workers, forged by economic hardship and adversity, capable of exhibiting a resilience as formidable as any warrior in history when defending their comrades. The silence in German military records pertaining to that day speaks volumes, reflecting their inability to comprehend or account for the events that transpired. We observe the most profound manifestation of defeat, not merely tactical or physical, but psychological and moral. They had encountered an adversary who was simply superior in the art of warfare. This realization fractured something fundamental within their warrior ethos. Today, the field outside Holtzwihr has reverted to peaceful agricultural land. The battle scars have faded. The artillery craters have been filled. The spilled blood has been washed away by the passage of decades. However, on January 26th of each year, a modest observance takes place at the memorial commemorating Murphy's stand. French citizens, American veterans, and occasionally elderly Germans convene to remember the day one American soldier proved that courage knows no bounds. Murphy's narrative serves as a potent reminder that heroism is not defined by the absence of fear. Murphy himself admitted to being terrified. It is characterized by acting in defiance of that fear when the well-being of others rests upon your actions. It is about making a stand when retreat would be the simpler option. It is about momentarily transcending one's own limitations for a critical purpose. Ultimately, this is why the Germans were utterly astonished when a single American soldier single-handedly repelled 250 German soldiers for over an hour. They had confronted something that military science could not explain, that tactical doctrine could not counter, that overwhelming force could not surmount. The indomitable human spirit embodied in a 110-pound Texan who would sooner perish than witness his friends fall. His stand at Holtzwihr remains an eternal testament to the profound impact one individual can have, at the opportune moment and with the correct motivation, capable of altering the course of events. The boy who hunted rabbits to sustain his family evolved into the man who halted an invading army to safeguard his companions. In the arena of war, as in life, this transformation from the ordinary to the extraordinary stands as the most astonishing truth.